Well, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today, I am chatting with Elle Hvozdovic. She is the Senior Marketing Manager of Growth and Expansion at CAVA. Welcome, Elle.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to jump into your career journey today. So Elle has worked across several different industries, several different company sizes. She's worked in sports, then went over to fitness, and then now is in food. So very excited to kind of talk about your career journey and how you ended up here. But before we jump into all of that fun stuff, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So, as you noted, I am the Senior Marketing Manager of Growth and Expansion for CAVA. It is a Mediterranean restaurant brand, if you have not heard of us yet, but I hope you have. I've been in marketing for about 10 years now, and worked for global brands, national brands, regional brands, done professional sports, did a little stint in media, fitness, food, and have literally worked in every area of marketing. I think I did graphic design, social media, PR, brand, but I think I've finally found my home with partnerships and field marketing. So have been doing that for the past couple of years.
I love it. Okay, before we jump into all of the marketing stuff, I have to know, what is your go-to kava order?
Ooh, okay. So if you're new to Kava, I would say the harissa avocado bowl for sure is a go-to. I am a greens and grains bowl, so we do super greens and the white rice. I do half falafel, half harissa chicken, and then dips. I do the red pepper hummus and the classic hummus. And then toppings, honestly, all of them are amazing. You got to get some pickled onions on there, some feta, tomato, and cucumber. And then I finish it off with the balsamic date dressing.
Oh, you're making me hungry. It's about lunchtime here, so that sounds delicious. I've eaten at the Kava in Austin. I'm in New York now, so I've been seeing them all over. So I'm excited to try the ones in New York too.
Amazing.
Okay, so actually, last like random question about Kava, just because I'm like personally curious. Do you guys at the office, is there a Kava in the corporate office that you guys order at a lot? Is it normal to just always be eating Kava there?
So we're really spoiled. We have an innovation kitchen in our headquarters. So
Oh
Chef
my
Michael
gosh.
and the rest of our culinary team are located there. So if they're testing out some new ingredients or cooking up something good, and you happen to be there, we get to try all types of really awesome stuff. So
You're kidding.
yeah, it's
That
awesome.
is a dream. That is better because I feel like a lot of corporate offices, I know when I worked in corporate, they had like the snack station, it would always make the
Right.
packaged stuff, but I can
Yeah,
only
they take it to the
imagine.
next level. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Amazing. Okay. So we have a little bit of a journey to get to before you got to Kava. And I know you mentioned that you kind of worked in a lot of different industries before figuring out, what you really liked, what was really meant for you. And a huge chunk of your career was working in sports. So can you tell me a little bit about how you even were able to enter the sports marketing industry so young? Because I know that space is such a competitive career to enter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started out playing lacrosse in college, and I had gotten hurt, had gone through some difficult times in my life in college, and I decided to transfer to Boston University. And so when I got there, which I think we'll get to in a bit, but I ended up having to try out for the lacrosse team there, and I didn't make it after being a collegiate athlete for 2 years. And it was like this existential life crisis of like, who am I? What am I going to do? And being in Boston, it's such an incredible sports city. And I thought, okay, well, is there a way that I can take this love of sports and, redirect it into working in the industry? And so I started working a bunch of internships in Boston. I worked for the Major League Lacrosse headquarters. MLB had a remote internship program there, so I worked with them and did a few other internships, kind of leading me to my career in that space. Got a post grad job with the Tampa Bay Rays down in Florida, and then eventually moved over to the PGA Tour in Ponte Vedra Beach for my first job.
Okay, well, you kind of just like casually mentioned that you got these super high profile internships in college, like getting an internship for the MLBs, imagining not easy at all. Do you have any advice there for being able to land competitive internships or anything that you think helped you stand out?
Yeah, I think, what was really interesting about Major League Lacrosse was even though it was the headquarters, that league compared to every other sport is very, very, very small, or at least was very small at that time. Now it's the Premier Lacrosse League. It's completely evolved. But I think what was really important at that period or that point in time was to say, like, I don't need to shoot for the moon in order to get in. I don't need to work for the Boston Bruins or the Red Sox to be able to get into this industry, to be completely okay with saying, hey, let me start at the bottom. Let me start with a small organization. Were even like individual professional lacrosse teams that were there. I think the Boston Cannons at the time was the team. And just being willing to kind of start small with whatever that role is. I think when I started, I was like writing blogs for Major League Lacrosse, which was not necessarily something I saw myself doing for the rest of my career, but really being willing to do whatever they needed me to do was just incredibly helpful. And then it kind of stacked, from there, where it was like, as long as I was able to get my foot in the door for that first opportunity, the networking opportunities, working with career services at school, Boston was incredible. They were deeply connected with the community, and that also helped. But really, kind of once you got in there, it's a very, very small world because there are only, limited amount of roles in the entire industry.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that would be my advice for getting in, for sure.
All right. So starting with some of the smaller, less competitive programs, and then just like building up your experience and network to be, have a better shot at those bigger opportunities.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. So, Elle, you spent a big chunk. So, like you mentioned, you kind of went to a couple different companies in sports. Your last, or not your last, but one of your big chunks was at the PGA Tour. So, I'm curious if you can touch on kind of what your experience was like there.
Yeah, the PGA Tour was a wild experience for me. I mean, one, it was awesome. I got to like live on the beach in Florida, which is crazy.
Gosh.
I think what was really exciting about the tour is that, there's a lot of young people that work there. So there were a ton of people in their 20s and 30s. It's a global brand. So just so many different areas that the company covers. And so to be able to kind of grow, it was an amazing place to be for that time in my life. I had two roles while I was there. The first one was more of like a social media marketing job where I oversaw tournament activations. So kind of how we talked about specific events on social media, web, app, and whatnot. And then the second one, I kind of evolved and grew into a role with the digital team where I was doing digital audience development. So basically kind of community engagement, watching our tens of millions of fans around the world and making sure that we were providing really great fan experiences, working with PGA Tour Live, which was our in-house production company. And again, a great opportunity to kind of touch a bunch of different areas of the business, which then allowed me to kind of move into my next role, which was with NBC Sports Washington, where I also worked in media and production through my connection with PGA Tour Live.
Okay. And so you have had this super successful stint within sports, and you had a lot of growth at each of these companies that you were at. But I also want to note that this kind of started with you not making the lacrosse team, which, like you said, was just, I think everyone at some level can relate to just wanting something so bad in their life, or, or just not even wanting something so bad, but just having probably that part was a part of your identity almost, and then just realizing that may not be an option for you. I know something that you had mentioned to me was that you like to use failure as a superpower. Is that where kind of that started, or how do you use that mindset approach to help you in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when you play collegiate sport, and anybody who's had the incredible opportunity to do it knows that, like, you give up your childhood to be able to earn a spot on a collegiate team. And so, traveling all over the country, missing, events as a kid and in high school, like for this kind of ultimate goal. And so I did have the opportunity to play for 2 years before I transferred, which was amazing. But I had suffered some injuries, and it was better in the long run that it didn't work out, but I think that that's why I'm able to look back and learn from that to say it was so devastating when it happened, and to be able to say, like, all right, well, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to redirect my attention and see what happens. And it set me on this path for this incredible career in professional sports. And like the second that I saw that I could use this as my motivator to say, like, hey, this was in my mind the biggest failure I could have experienced, and I was able to come back from that, I think I can do anything. Like it really kind of changed my perspective on, okay, so if I'm, if I encounter an obstacle, if I get rejected, if I get laid off, if something happens, I believe that I will be okay because I've gone through this before. And as long as I work my butt off, it will be okay in the future. And I really think that mindset has really separated me, from others in my career path. And, when I've been able to interview and, as so many of you know on this, who listen to this podcast, it's draining to go through the interview process in general. I mean, I think so the NBC Sports Washington role that we were talking about, that was my absolute dream job. Again, so like my next iteration of the most amazing thing that could have ever happened to me. I was covering the Baltimore Ravens, the Washington Capitals, just these behemoths in professional sports, working with on-air talent and kind of managing all of our content for the network at 24 years old. It was unbelievable. And I was there for 6 months before COVID hit, and COVID hit the sports and the team in an insane way. And so the company ended up selling out NBC Sports Washington twice after that. And my role just kind of changed. Leadership was removed or left or whatnot as a result. And so again, I felt like I was back in this place where it was like, oh my gosh, I had everything. And now I feel like I have nothing and I don't know what to do here. And so, but because I had gone through kind of the college experience and everything in between, just being in this very competitive professional sports industry, being like, okay, I'm going to put myself out there relentlessly until I make something else work. And so, I would have loved to have stayed in the professional sports industry. One day, maybe I'll end up back there, but it really was, I was just not in a position where I was really growing anymore. There was so much movement within the organization. That I was like, hey, if I want to continue to grow, I have to find something else. I literally applied for like over 500 jobs over the span of 18 months to try and get another job in this like incredibly difficult COVID market, as everyone knows existed. And that was when I was given the opportunity to work at Solid Core as a lateral move. I was not able to move up. The pay wasn't substantively different. And again, it was a smaller company than all the companies I'd worked for, these giant global brands my entire career. And this was a small startup, relative size brand. And in my mind, I felt like I was failing myself in some way, where I was like, I've worked this hard and I've achieved all these things and I feel like I'm taking 10 steps back. And again, it was like that mindset of like, okay, well, it is what it is. We're gonna take it for what it's worth, and we're gonna move forward and we're gonna make it work. And so, kind of just every step in my career, I really feel like, keeping that mindset of, as long as you're willing to give 110% and really put yourself out there and make sacrifices. I've had to move to places that I didn't necessarily want to live for different jobs, but all knowing that at the end of the day, now where I'm at, I'm incredibly happy and I love what I'm doing, and being able to look back and say, I'm just so thankful that I was able to learn from those experiences and use them as a superpower in some ways, to make sure that I didn't let them tear me down and just continue to move forward.
It is very inspiring to hear your perspective and mindset and all that. So thank you for kind of letting us like peek behind what's going on in your head, especially during a time like the pandemic. I think everyone kind of has their own experience of what that was like. For a lot of people, it completely changed what their job looked like. It either led to them being laid off, and it is, like you mentioned, like you at this point had so much success in your career to now feel like 500 jobs. That is crazy.
That's wild.
And what's also crazy is that I know that there are other women maybe listening to this podcast too that are going through that or have gone through that or feel like they're just applying to so many jobs and they're like, at what point, is something wrong with me, or is this normal? Like, what's going on? And then, like you mentioned, you weren't even sure if the job that you did get was the right choice for you. So I think it can be like comforting to hear that at any point in your career that can still be a place that you find yourself in. But I think the challenge is not letting it get to your self-worth. Is there anything, because I know you mentioned like you did have this internal struggle with, your dream job not turning out the way you wanted it to be, you not being able to find another opportunity, you finding when you're not really sure. Anything you can kind of share there for someone going through a tough time of like, and trying to ask themselves, like, is it me? Is it because I'm, just not skilled? Or is it, kind of how to deal with that I don't know, that negative internal voice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the most important thing to acknowledge there is it's not just you who's thinking that. Those
Yeah.
thoughts go through everyone's head when you're in that process. No matter, even someone where, on paper, my career is very impressive. Like I had those exact same thoughts when I was going through the process. I think as silly as it sounds, the positive self-talk of really waking up, and I'm an empath, and so building relationships even through interviews and then, having them not work out was a huge high and low for me, and a big struggle. And I just got to a place where I said, okay, if I don't get a role that I was really excited about, I'm going to let myself be sad, and then I'll be sad for a couple of days, and then I'm going to let myself grieve it, and then I need to get back on the horse. I need to be able to do it all over again. And it was just this positive self-talk of like, be kind to yourself, let yourself feel things. That's okay. This is a very difficult process. But you're going to be okay. You can get back up. You've done this before. You can do it again. And I think the more times you put yourself in those positions, even just in the interview process, of saying, okay, yes, okay, someone reached out, no matter what the company is, no matter what the role is. If someone is interested in interviewing you, I always say do it, because it will build up the confidence so that when there is a role that you're like, this is it, this is the job that I want, you are so confident going into it. And that way, when you walk away from it, you can say, no, I gave that my all. I know that I'm incredibly experienced in interviewing. I have the confidence that I've adjusted over, dozens of times of doing this. I've been able to adjust my approach, and I bring a positive energy, and I'm able to clearly and concisely talk about my achievements, and kind of who I am and what I bring to the table. Sometimes you're just not a good fit. Sometimes there's an internal hire that they don't tell you about. It's not you. It's just the situation. And I think it's kind of funny. Like by the end of the process, I really just forced myself into a headspace where it was like, it's not you, it's the situation. Because and whether or not that's true, and that's not to say you shouldn't continue to always try and improve on your interview approach and your skill set there. You have to be your number one advocate all the time, and that belief truly has to come from within. And the more you do it, the more it will meet you there. You can't let it beat you down just because they're rejecting you. They're not rejecting you. There are so many things that happen in the background in hiring that have literally nothing to do with you. Even if you were the most perfect interviewee on the planet, take what you learned from that interview process. What did you like? What did you not like? And bring it into the next, interview that you have the opportunity to do.
I love that mantra. It's not you, it's the situation. And you make a good point. Like they could have made an internal hire. I always tell a lot of my students who are applying for internships is like, they may have hired their nephew or their daughter.
100%.
You
Yeah.
have no idea. And, or, and it could have been an internal, like there's a lot of nepotism maybe that goes on, or like you said, like in COVID too, budget, it could just be, there was budget for a role and that budget was like changed from the role or like there's so many things that you don't know that are going on behind the scenes. And similar to kind of how I think they say this with like relationships too, is like a big part of it is also timing. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of time for you to find the right timing for you in a company and a match.
Yeah, absolutely. It literally has to be the perfect everything, and
Yeah.
whether or not it's the right time for that. And also just telling yourself, like, okay, maybe right now wasn't the right time, whether it's for me or for the company itself. And personally, based on my experience, what I perceived as incredible job as I didn't get, whatever happened after that was better for me than what that job would have offered. And so continuing to tell yourself that as well, like there was a reason for why that didn't work out, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to move it into the next opportunity. But what I see a lot of people do is they won't get that dream job, and they'll get so discouraged that they stop putting themselves out there. You can't get the next job if you let that rejection keep you from continuing to interview. Because if you never put yourself in front of those next opportunities, there's 100% chance you will not get the job. So, really keeping that in the back of your mind to say, okay, yes, this was a rejection, and this is not going to work out, but there will not be another solution to my problem if I don't continue to put myself out there.
That's also such a good point. And because I also know sometimes role rejection is really hard, especially I think if you're younger and it's kind of like your first time being rejected a lot on the job hunt. It is super discouraging. And I know sometimes it can really, really affect any woman's confidence going through that. And sometimes I've talked to students that are, you know, they get rejected from a company they really want, maybe they made it to like the final round and then they don't get it. And then for a month they're, you know, they don't apply to any more jobs because they're afraid of having to go through that again, which is a valid feeling. But you're absolutely right that there isn't you know, another job's not going to magically appear unless you like go back and you go and do that again. And so yeah, I think you mentioned at the beginning, like allow yourself to feel sad for a couple of days. That's normal, but you have to go, you know, you have to keep going. And I always also use the term building momentum for yourself, right? If you keep applying and stuff, you're going to start building momentum. And when you take a big long break, like a month off or 2 months off because you feel a little shook from a rejection, then you kind of have to start all over from scratch the next time you go back on the job hunt.
100%.
All right. I love that little tangent or not even tangent, but I love that we kind of dove into that. Okay, so let's talk about kind of this career switch that you made. So you out of this time you went out of sports and you went into solid core. And this was a big partnership, like heavy role for you. Was this your first time being, you know, doing partnerships, or have you kind of done that before in sports?
Yeah, no, and that was kind of the crazy part is, you know, working in social media, I had done, you know, projects that involved partnership collaboration, but I was not the one actually driving the deals in any of my previous roles. You know, one of my skill sets was the relationship facilitation side of marketing, but specifically working with brands. I had not done it before the solid core role at all.
Okay, so a new challenge, and some of the partners that Elle had worked on while she was at Solid Core were Aloe Yoga, Milk Makeup, Liquid IV, Daily Harvest, Celsius. So huge, huge, huge partners, like really, really big companies, really fun companies. So what was that experience like, or can you maybe like either walk us through a partnership or just show us kind of what that type of role entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really funny because it was kind of the first iteration of this role for Solid Core when I took it. It kind of started out as a brand marketing specific role where I was more so focusing on campaigns and content. And based on the needs of the company, we had this hole for partnerships that we needed to fill. And so I kind of raised my hand to say, hey, you know, I've been kind of in the PR space, I've been in the content space. You know, I think this is an area that I would love to grow in. You know, I'd be happy to take this on. And so very minimally it was, hey, are there any partners out there that we would like to work with on a case by case, project to project basis? And so we started reaching out to brands, and I had no budget. None at all. I literally didn't have a single dollar to partner with other brands. And so it really forced me, you know, to take a step back and strategize and say like, okay, what can Solid Core offer to these brands to do some type of in-kind partnership where we give them something for free, they give us something for free, and there's mutual benefit in us helping to grow each other's brands. And so I will say I was honestly a little surprised that I was able to find the success that I was with some of these brands. They are massive. They are incredibly successful. But one, I will say the partnership teams for all of those brands are unreal. Most of them are very, very small, single individuals that are representing their partnership deals. And they're just incredible humans, which makes it a lot easier in business, which I think is a massive skill set if you can kind of bring that to the table for marketing partnerships of just it's building relationships and it's negotiating deals a little bit, but really having that motivation to find the middle ground at the end of the day. And so a gap that we had at Solid Core was, okay, you know, how can we continue to keep people motivated to buy memberships? You know, what else could we add to our memberships to make them exciting? And so one of the ideas that I brought to the table with our leadership team was like, hey, what if we tried to leverage some of these brands as perks to memberships? So is there something that these partners are looking for as part of their business strategy that they want to push that we can kind of feed into? And vice versa, you know, we can put their names on our memberships and help to kind of push that forward. And so, you know, literally took 10 months for me to pitch. I think there was like 27 brands that we pitched to potentially be a part of this core collective program. And we landed on 5 of the 6 that you mentioned for the actual core collective program. But it was unbelievable. I mean, just finding these in-kind opportunities where we were able to offer discounts to our members, to these brands, just by being our members, and in-kind, supporting those brands in different ways. But it really was just an incredible experience. And again, it was one of those things where I completely went into an aspect of marketing that I had no experience in, and was able to be like, wow, okay, like I'm passionate about this. I really love this. This is a lot of fun. Like, I think I found my new niche. Like, this is the thing that I'd love to move forward with in my career. And so that was kind of the beginning of how I made the decision to move into marketing partnerships in that way.
Well, what a beautiful connection, because you went from maybe being like, I don't know if this is the right move for me. Like, is
Yes.
this right? Or all those rejections to finally being able to realize like, oh my gosh, I think I found my thing. And also normalizing that it doesn't always happen at the beginning of your career, right? Sometimes it takes you like a little bit of time, some, learning about yourself until you find, kind of that niche that really excites you. I'm also curious. So for those, I think most people know what solid core is, but solid core is I'm not going to like explain the workout, but it's a Pilates form type of workout. Am I doing that
It's
correctly?
Pilates inspired strength
Inspired
training
workout.
workout on a reformer. Yes.
So tell me, so Milk Makeup is one of the partners. So we got fitness, we got makeup. So when you're mentioning these in-kind partnerships, is that, if I'm a solid core member, then I get a discount like purchasing at Milk Makeup and those other brands?
Yeah, and it differs based on, the details of the different memberships that you have, and kind of what the benefits are based on kind of what the business was looking for. But that is one of the benefits that you could get at a brand like that by, through the program.
Okay. Were there any other forms of those partners? So was they mostly like discounts, or were there any other kind of like types of partnerships that you did?
Yeah, I mean, there's, the other side of it of just like, can we collaborate on influencers? Can we collaborate on events? And obviously, I have not been at Solid Core for 3 months, so I don't know what has changed. But the goal, at least going into it, and I think this is generally just in the world of marketing partnerships, is, when you're looking for these brands, it's not just about like, hey, what is, who is interested in working with us? Okay, we'll work with anyone. It's really about setting those brand expectations of, do they share similar values to you as a brand? Do they share a similar audience? Is this genuinely an interest of the audience that we have? And at any brand, that is really what you're looking to when you're looking to, establish partnerships. But it was very exciting for Solid Core in the sense that all of these brands, except for one, were bigger than Solid Core at the time.
Yeah.
And so really to just help elevate the brand and increase brand awareness, it was really exciting.
Yeah. And even like connecting your smaller brand to these big companies in itself is just a huge win. So exciting. And the one thing too I love about partnerships is just so much of the creativity, like you mentioned, like going into it, and you even built this out. So it's like, what could the partnership look like? Like, what can we do together? How can we help each other? And as you mentioned, when the other teams are also amazing to work with, that just makes the job so much more fun. So yes, I can see kind of why you found like your passion and niche there. Partnerships are a very fun space to be. So now you're over at CAVA. So if you want to share a little bit about your transition moving over there.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, Kava was just such like it was so crazy to end up like in my role at Kava. I literally, our CXO, Andy, had posted my role on his LinkedIn, like reposted it. And I straight up shot my shot on LinkedIn, and I messaged him and I was like, I've never met him before, don't know him. And I literally was like, hey, this is what I do at Solid Core. It was literally a mix of partnerships and field marketing, which I can touch on in a little bit more as well, of helping Solid Core grow as a brand. It seems like this is a perfect fit for the role. I would love the opportunity to interview. And he responded to me and was like, yep, apply for the role, and we'll review it. And I ended up getting the interview and
Oh my
actually
gosh.
getting the job. But it's so funny because I always tell people, like, nothing is too crazy. Like, put yourself out there in whatever way possible. Cold message people, always connect with as many people on LinkedIn as you can in terms of networking. You just never know who knows someone. And in my case, literally just giving it a shot and see what happens. And obviously there was an in-depth interview process and several other candidates, but just to get my foot in the door in a space I'd never been in, it was just very funny to kind of
Yeah.
really risk it and have it work out. So
I love that. Nothing is too crazy. And messaging people on LinkedIn, I think a lot of people think like, oh no, I'm not gonna message because they're not gonna see it or whatever, but you never know. And I think especially when people post jobs like that on LinkedIn, they're posting it because they
yeah,
want it to be seen. And I think a lot of people, when they see jobs on LinkedIn, they make like someone posting a job, they make the mistake of just saying like commenting applied or interested and not actually like doing what you did, which is actually messaging that person. And like you said, you did not know him, but you messaged him, you told him a personal, why I'm interested in the role, why I think I'm a good fit, and that you're interested. But I think that goes a long way. And like you said, you never know. And that can be kind of the difference between you being lost in the hundreds of applicants versus you being noticed and at least given a shot for that first interview.
absolutely.
So can you tell me a little bit more about what your role at CAVA looks like?
Yeah. So, and I think this was kind of the most eye-opening part of how I've transitioned through these different industries was my role at CAVA is almost a spitting image of my role at Solid Core. Two completely different industries, one being fitness, one being food, but two fast-growing organizations that are expanding at massive rates. CAVA is unbelievable, expanding at wild rates, which is amazing because we're bringing CAVA to more places. But to kind of lead expansion from a marketing standpoint, I was doing it with studios at Solid Core, where you're basically saying, okay, when we go to market with a new studio, where are we putting this new studio? Are we putting it in an existing market, a completely net new market, and how are we changing our marketing strategies from one to the next? At CAVA, same concept for our restaurants. And so as we are expanding as a company, how am I adjusting those go-to-market strategies for different types of markets that we're going into, which ends up encompassing several different areas of marketing, being partnerships, working with the PR team, working with social, fundraisers, ambassador programs, anything you can think of really ends up being a part of your expansion strategy. And so what's kind of been full circle, about working in field marketing now and having this focus on partnerships is that it's everything I've done up until this point contributes to the role that I do right now. Because you end up, when you're working in a marketing strategy role, oftentimes it requires you to work with so many cross-functional teams that to have the knowledge of not only working with, but working in some of those different teams, it makes working with the creative team easier. It makes working with the operations team, the real estate team, the legal team, that much easier when you've had the opportunity to do a bunch of different stuff. So, if you've had a career or you've had a few different roles where you've done a few different things, in my opinion, use that as a strength. It's a unique skill set that you have, that you've got this broader perspective, and definitely an opportunity to help separate you from other individuals that might be interviewing for a role.
Yeah, and that kind of all those nonsense, those different experiences in the past will like come together to make you an incredible fit for an opportunity that you may not have known existed, which I think is kind of what you're explaining happening here with CAVA. And so this is your first role within a completely different industry. And as you mentioned before, you switched industries a lot. Is it a lot different working within the food space? Or what has your experience been like there?
In terms of, it's funny because I think what I've learned is like, as long as you learn the brand that you're going to, so like you take the time to educate yourself when you go to this new industry on what that brand product is, be able to rehearse it inside and out. What is that brand that you're talking about selling, pushing, promoting? It's very similar across the board. I think the biggest difference has been the size of the company. So like for a CAVA that is fast growing and expanding really rapidly, that's been the biggest change from like a PGA Tour where they have their set global audience. They've got their tournaments, they've got their schedules, and it rarely ever changes. Whereas, a Solid Core and a CAVA, everything moves a lot faster. There's a lot going on all the time because the companies are growing so quickly. And so with that, being able to be nimble and kind of adjust in that way, that definitely was the biggest difference. But in terms of actually, working on partnerships or actually working on field marketing or, different areas of the actual marketing funnel, very similar, from role to role, industry to industry that I've had the opportunity to work in.
Yeah, I think that's comforting to hear as well, because I think sometimes when you're early in your career, you may feel like you're locked into one industry or something, if that's where you get your first job. But just how you mentioned that those skills will kind of accumulate and actually maybe help you get another job, because that makes you different from the other applicants for that role. So I know you mentioned some of your partners at Solid Core. You've only been at CAVA for a couple months at the time of recording this. So I know that I'll ask you the question, but you can let me know. I know in the past, CAVA did a partnership with Emma Chamberlain, which was amazing. That's the only one that I know of or have seen. Is there anything that you've gotten to work on recently in the past couple months that you've been excited about?
We've got some stuff in the pipeline, none that I
All
can
right,
report
all
right
right.
now. But no, Emma was an incredible partner. You know, everyone who was here, who I've talked to, who worked with her, was a lot of fun. I think it was a great learning experience for CAVA. I think it helped kind of shape how we would view partnerships moving forward, and why my role was created for me to come on. So just very excited. You know, keep an eye out for CAVA. I think we've got some
All
exciting
right. I'm
stuff
excited.
coming up.
When this episode, because our episodes go live a little after we record, I'll have to check back in and see what is
Yeah.
in the works. But it's also like, I think one of the amazing things that about partnerships, like for example, CAVA partnering with Emma Chamberlain, it may not be the most obvious partnership unless you know like Emma Chamberlain like personally loves
Yeah.
CAVA, but other than that, like you kind of mentioned some of the partners with Solid Core, but I think that's what's so fun about partnerships is that there are so many possibilities of who you could partner with. It doesn't, CAVA doesn't just need to partner with other food companies or anything like that, right? Solid Core doesn't just need to partner with fitness brands, is that you can be super creative and imaginative with partners and, turn something like CAVA or food and make it more exciting by doing, partners outside of that space. So
Absolutely.
excited to see what CAVA's got in store. And Al, your role is remote. Are you fully remote at CAVA?
Yes. So we do have a headquarter location in DC, but
Okay.
the company as a whole is able to work remote.
Okay. So do you work mostly remote?
Yes, I'm actually the only team member that's in the DMV area. So like I can actually drive in and go if I wanted to, from the marketing team. So it's pretty crazy. Like it's amazing. There's a ton of flexibility. And I think, it's funny. That's a great topic too, because I've worked now in roles that are fully in person,
Okay.
hybrid, and fully remote, or can be fully remote. And I think, I love the fact that being remote allowed CAVA to hire people for their qualifications wherever they were, not necessarily having to be in our backyard. And I think it's allowed us to build this really incredible team that we have at CAVA. But I don't, so I know some people have issues with remote work. I think it's been awesome. I think something that I've learned is as long as everyone is remote or everyone is in person, things run smoothly. I think the biggest challenge that I found was the hybrid model actually was,
Really?
if certain people are always remote, or if some people are remote, or if people are in the office on different days, I actually found that there was like more miscommunication and more challenges. I'd be so curious to hear what other people think, but it's been such an interesting dynamic to kind of have that switch. And but I love the way that CAVA kind of has set up their model right now.
Yeah, that is interesting to hear that you think the hybrid is a little bit more more problematic. I can absolutely see that though, because if you're in office trying to meet and then like half of the team members are remote or like vice versa, I can see how that would be a little bit complicated versus like everybody kind of being remote and on that same level, everybody being in person.
Yeah.
It's one of the, I think it should be talked about more, the different work environments and what's best. And I know remote sounds like the most attractive in a way, right? Oh, I don't need to wake up and drive. I don't have a commute. But I also know sometimes that for some people, going into the office and being able to like be in that environment is also really important. So I think that's an interesting thing to kind of like figure out. I know for me, like today working from the apartment. Well, obviously I told you my crazy morning, I had to go buy a new microphone because my podcast setup was not working out. Which I have the flexibility to do because I'm remote, but I'm also like the type of person that gets very distracted easily. So I've like cleaned up the apartment 5 different times.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think, to that point, what's really special, I think, is because CAVA still has a headquarters, like we
Yeah.
can go to it. So like if I'm a couple weeks into remote and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to be around people, I can like get up and go in and see people and be surrounded by other people who are local. Our leadership team is always in there. And so, it's just really great. And again, the innovation kitchen, chefs are always in there cooking up. So
Yes.
it's a great option to have if it's something that, you're interested in doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good balance too. I know I'll go like work at Soho House if I really want to like work in person or something. But obviously, I had to pay for that option. It didn't come free to me. So I think it is really good to kind of have both choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Elle. So we've gone through your crazy career journey from sports to fitness to food. Any last advice that you want to share with women in marketing?
The only other thing is just, I know we talked about just like utilizing LinkedIn and other social media networks, but truly just like build those relationships. I know even there will be people that you reach out to who don't acknowledge your existence, and that's okay. And that's totally fine. But again, don't let that discourage you from continuing to build connections elsewhere. I think, I am so excited always when anyone reaches out to me on LinkedIn to even just talk about, hey, I'd love to introduce myself. I'm kind of in the industry as well and getting started. Do you have any advice or feedback? I think, for me, connections were things that helped progress me throughout my career, whether it be someone that I had worked with or someone that I had met through networking. And so just making sure that you're continuing to prioritize that, again, just like not letting the rejection across the board get you down. It's you will build back stronger, and the people who build back stronger are the ones that end up in those opportunities that help push them forward. There's never been a CEO that didn't get rejected a gazillion times before they became CEO. So just keeping that in mind as you continue to grow. And but yeah, you're doing great. That's my last words. You're doing great, and keep it up. It'll all work out, I promise.
I feel like you were just speaking personally to me right there.
I was.
Okay, Elle, thank you so much for an incredible episode. It has been so much fun just hearing you and your advice. And I just love feeling your energy throughout this episode. So thank you so much.
Of course. No, so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm glad we got the chance to talk.